how's it going? Welcome to another video upload from Aspie with Attitude. And if you're watching this for the first time, my name is David. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I have autism, I have some speech difficulty, speech impairment, and I have the spooky syndrome, and that's why I call myself an Aspie. And now, since I'm going to stop this now, and this is how I introduce you to episode 248, when I talk about how autistic individuals will have different thought processes. Before I get into this video upload, it might be the first time that you're watching this video. What I do is, I talk about autism using a voice from a real autistic individual like me. And that's why I make a stand for autistic rights with the neurodiversity community. And I'm only do autistic YouTube contents here. And if you like what I'm actually doing here, you can always hit the red button, which is please subscribe. That's all I ever ask for, interest and support. And also, there's always a notification bell that you could ring. It is there to keep up to date to all my future videos. And also, one more thing to support this channel, you can always please like and share this video content around. That's all I ever ask for in terms of support for this channel, and nothing else. So once I get on with the video now, as a whole, I will begin by at first explaining that most individuals who are on the autism spectrum would most likely to think differently. That's being outside the square of neurotypical driven society and the social norms and conformity. This is how most of our brains and our minds are wired differently. My favourite explanation, once explaining autism, is that most likely the brain of a neurotypical individual would move in a clockwise direction, while the autistic brain would move in a counterclockwise or anti-clockwise direction. Depends on how you want to say this. And I wish to focus on the positive, and I may save the negative for another day, just to avoid making a very long video. Once this comes to autistic individuals like myself here, us having different thought processes may influence such beautiful minds that most neurotypicals may find challenging and difficult to understand. Once an individual is autistic, it is highly expected that the person will think differently towards everybody's expectations in neurotypical driven society. For example, I can go back to high school, especially growing up in the 90s. We were taught arithmetic problems like long multiplication sums and formulas back in our maths class. Explained that the maths teacher would tell us one way to solve those long multiplications without the use of any calculators or any that kind of technology that will give us the answer. What we don't realise is a second way to do or solve the long multiplication sums or formulas and still have a correct answer, despite that the formula wasn't solved the way your maths teacher wanted you to solve the long multiplication formula or the sums. Just like, still you have the right answer to solving this mathematical equation, and this still gets the red cross. And the best thing about it is, I never had this experience in high school with any given maths teacher, despite that I wasn't all that great in maths back in high school. And I can talk about my personal experience was when I was doing cabinet making with this particular company from 2006 up till 2008. I once had my supervisor go angry, get cranky and get grumpy at me if I did show any alternate ways of getting this job done, even if the outcome or the end result was the same as doing the job entirely his way. The only reason why I never built cabinets his way is because my brain was wired to a much different thought process that I'm explaining. And those were the two examples how one autistic individual would be expected to complete any given tasks with much different thought processes, since that everyone always thinks differently in this world, especially hearing this from an autistic individual. I could even suggest why most autistic individuals would think differently and may have to do with sensory challenges. It all depends on how those challenges would affect the person who's on the autism spectrum, which I pretty much explained this back in episode 170, which was done in April 2021. So I'll leave a card if you want to understand what I mean by sensory challenges, since I don't want to really get into talking about sensory challenges here. And also, it's not a surprise that there are autistic individuals would zone out on any given task, as I explained this back in episode 27, which I've made this episode far back as November 2018. And I'm talking about how they fall into hyperfocus and be almost like an autopilot. That's what I mean by zoning out on a task. And here's another card to take you to this episode. And just to get on with it now, enough of these recaps. Others may simply just think in pictures, sequences or patterns, which is only up to the individual themselves, depends on what works for them. Overall, using different thought process will always be different from one and another. It is a challenge for me to go in any further detail to explain why is it that autistic individuals would think differently outside the square of conformity, the mainstream, and something that's been created, influenced by neurotypical driven society. Most neurotypical individuals are never interested in things like if there was illustrations or any diagrams or any pictures that are being drawn up on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard on how the mind of an autistic individual works, since that most neurotypicals will have these expectations that everybody would think the same in the mainstream. And it's never always the case, especially dealing with autistic individuals. The aim of us with different thought processes is generally to have any given task done with a way that it will work for us. Maybe one neurotypical individual don't like it how one thought process is different from one another, as this may appear to become confusing, perplexing or puzzling. And since I'm just about to end it here, this video content was just to suggest how it is that in the mind of an autistic individuals are wired differently, and most of us use different thought processes, considering that I do this all the time because I just want to work with what really works for me. And I'm just going to actually finish this one off. What I usually do at the end of the video is it's going to be the fidget spin nose trick, and also the two thumbnails I showed you in the course of the video will be at the end of the animation if you enjoy watching this again, and also the music that I made too. So anyway, let's finish it off then, shall we? I hope you enjoyed what I actually said and understood what's being said. Please leave in the comments down below if you want to have your say if there's anything that you misunderstood. And however it is, thanks for watching, thanks for listening to Aspie with Attitude, peace and respect, and see you next time from Aspie with Attitude.